Felipe Luciano was an Afro-Puerto Rican. He was born on November 24th, 1947 in East Harlem. His mother was Puerto Rican, born in New York, and his father was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Felipe Luciano was many different things. For example, he was an actor, journalist, a poet, and many more. Some movies that he's known for is It Could Happen to You from 1994, Panther from 1995, and The Badger from 1973. Felipe Luciano also became a founder member of the original Last Poets with Kyla and David Nelson. The Last Poets were a group of people who influenced hip-hop, jazz, and spoken word. Felipe Luciano also co-founded the Young Lords from New York in 1969 with 5 other members, but later they changed the name to Young Lords Party. At around age 16, Felipe Luciano served time in prison for 2 years because of being involved in manslaughter of a rival gang member that injured his brother badly. Here is one of Felipe Luciano's poems.
There are those who beat people to death with boredom and ugliness. We in Tropic Jazz beat people to life with rhythms that come from a continent that speaks of sun, that speaks of rainbows and elephants that like monk and lions who dig puente. Speak to me not of tired musical cliches, of old licks and abused arrangements.
As we said, Felipe Luciano is a community activist and co-founder of the New York branch of the Young Lords. Today he is remembered as a media personality, politician, journalist, and co-founder of The Last Poets. In 1964, he is convicted of manslaughter and serves only 2 years, but in reality, he was a notorious gang leader who should have been charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to a much longer time in prison for his crimes. His lifestyle should tell you to think about your actions or it could affect your life.
Felipe Luciano's story relates to the history fairs, debate, and diplomacy because when Felipe Luciano joined a gang called the Canarsie Champlains as a teenager, he became one of the leaders for the gang at around age 13. Then, at age 16, he was involved in stabbing another rival gang member around the same age as him. So as I said, at that time, he was around age 16, and he should have known that there would be big consequences for his actions of second-degree attempted manslaughter. After, it led to Felipe Luciano being sentenced to 2 years at a maximum security jail called Coxsackie Correctional. While being at Coxsackie for 2 years, he completed his education, and after those 2 years, he got released. From this, you or anyone else could debate about if his 2 years at Coxsackie was fit for him, or if he should have gotten more than 2 years at Coxsackie in his sentencing. Or maybe he could have even gotten sent to better maximum security where it was more strict. From someone's perspective who wants Felipe to have been sentenced to a 5-year sentence or more, they could say that Felipe was a 16-year-old teenager at that time, so he should have known that what was right and wrong, and what big consequences he would face after being involved in the stabbing. He was also the gang leader of the gang that he joined, so he should have known that being in a gang could bring big consequences. So yes, he should have gotten 5 or more years in his sentencing to jail. From the other's perspective, it could be that at first, before all of that, a police officer had actually beat him. Felipe Luciano just wanted to defend himself. After that, he committed the stabbing, but he might not have been as educated as you think he is. He is at his young state, and at that age, sometimes you do things and you will eventually regret but to learn from it. So he did only serve those 2 years. If there were to be diplomacy about this, people could come up with a good solution to fix the argument by agreeing if Felipe should have gone to another maximum security jail or stayed, or to be sentenced about 2 to 5 years to jail. Another reason how they could agree is because we actually don't know whether he knew the good or bad, or if he was never really educated about the good or bad. But most likely he knew, but you could still come up with a good sentence for him that everyone would agree on.
What we think that would prove that Felipe Luciano deserved a much longer time in prison is because the average years of sentencing in jail for manslaughter is actually 2 to 5 years in prison. But since he committed second-degree murder, it should have been about 4 years or more. Also, in 1963, he became a gang leader of an awful gang. Then in 1964, he attempted second-degree manslaughter, which then ended up with him being involved in stabbing a teenager his age that was in a rival gang. Even though he was 16 when he stabbed the young teenager, he knew that it would come with some big consequences. And he obviously knew that it was not the right decision, but he still did it.
Have gathered more information to prove that Philip Luciano deserved more than 2 years in prison. Back at the time, Philip clearly had to know that there was a lot of racism. So why get involved and become a gang leader when you know there's a lot of racism? Because he should have known and thought about it that if he were to get caught and he would be treated badly. So he really should have known about it because not a lot of people think before they get into a gang. For example, if it could put everyone he loved in danger, even himself. So a 16-year-old will finally be wise enough to know about this. At the age of 16, when Philip Luciano saw his brother get into a fight with a different gang member, which Philip Luciano couldn't take it at all, so he targeted the one who messed with his brother and stabbed him. Which Philip Luciano should have known if he stabbed someone, maybe something bad is going to happen to him. After Philip Luciano stabbed who he targeted, he was convicted of manslaughter and served 2 years in prison. In our perspective, we think that Philip Luciano is a brave and nice man, but also a protective person. We say protective because he kind of saved his brother, but also he's the one who committed manslaughter, which he never knew that it was going to happen like that, but sometimes you should think about what is going to happen.
In conclusion, all of our evidence shows 3 different ways that prove our thesis is a good argument. It shows how, not only from us, but from the official laws that show the amount of years you get sentenced to prisons for manslaughter. It also shows how we were able to tell about how long he should have gone depending on the situation. We also show 2 ways from our perspective and how teenagers should act around the age of 16 and know certain things about good and bad, and how he knew he would have to suffer big consequences because he didn't think before doing something.